Hey folks, Scott Grove here, Dr. Groovy of GroovyMusicLessons.com. Here's some bendy country stuff. I had taught these on a lesson somewhere. I could not find them doing a search anywhere over my 1,000 videos or so. I know I put them on a video that was like 40 some minutes into a video as an afterthought. So I'm going to make this the only thought on this video. So you guys can search for it and find it easier because of the title and the keywords. Okay, enough about that. This is, again, country stuff. They can be taken to blues or rock and roll, whatever it is. But it teaches you how to do all the bends possible over any given chord. Okay, so this is great for anything. As I usually tell you, don't use these things as an entire solo. It would get so flippin' boring, but it's great tossed in, you know, like salt and pepper, just a pinch here and there, especially endings and so forth. These are awesome. I'm going to go ahead and turn on a backing track over here when I move us over this way and kind of show you what I'm talking about, all right? So you can see if you care to do this or not. So I'll catch you over there. Okay, so now that I'm over here, have access to a backing track I tossed together real quick. And it's slow, so I can teach it slow. You can play it however, but I primarily use these during slow things and then really fast stuff with distortion on and so forth, because bending is bending. But I'm gearing towards country today because I like it. Okay, so basically what we're going to be doing is covering over the top of 3 chord shapes, over the top of an A shape, a D shape, and then basically a bar chord shape or an F shape. Some might call it an F shape if you only use just a part of it, but if you use the whole thing, then it's actually an E shape with a bar behind it. So a bar chord is actually what we're looking at. So if I was to be in the key of A, which is what we're going to be in for the entire lesson, and I turn my guitar up, then we have, what's going to happen is I'm going to teach you, like here's over the top of the D, how to do all the bends possible. If you don't have a compressor yet and you're a country lead guitar player, shame on you. If you don't have a volume pedal yet and you're a country lead guitar player, shame on you. Okay, so so those type of things. And in, like I said, over top of different keys, because we'll go to D and we'll go to E, and the thought process from doing everything from one to another. And again, over top of the D shape, that would be... Okay, so those would actually come in... So those are just the ones over top of the D shape alone. If I was to do it over top of the bar chord shape. Okay, and over top of the A shape, we would be getting stuff like... Okay, so those are all the bends that are associated with the 3 different shapes. So if it sounds groovy to you, cool. I will throw on the backing track really quick and give you a little tiny heads up of what's happening, why I'm using these, because they sound cool, okay? And just what kind of things they're going to be sounding like. And like I said, a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. So what I'm getting ready to play right now is way, way, way too much of it. But you'll get an idea, okay? So I'll skip around between positions and show you basic bends over those 3 shapes, okay? Kind of stuff I'll be showing you, and plus we'll be doing octaves all over the place. So if it sounds groovy, let's have a sit down and do this thing, okay? Catch you on the chair. Okay, glad you guys stuck around. The guitar I'm using today is a USA made James Burton model Telecaster, one of 6 that came out if you don't count the Mexican regular red telly, but all his have the 3 lace sensor things going on, and a cool Strato telly switch, 5-way. You put it in the middle, you actually get your 2 telly pickups. Very cool. You got a push pull, or just a push button right here. Takes you from series to parallel. Very cool. So it's a super guitar, and it is super. Okay, so to get into our first shape and start bending around, let's go ahead and go into the A shape, okay? And since we are in A, let's take it all the way up to the 14th fret. So 14, 14, 14 across the D, G, and B. I'm not showing it down here right now because it is a hard one to bend. I will put it down here in just a second, okay? But right now, just for the sake of comfort, we'll put it up here. Okay, so what we have is what notes can we actually take and bend to where, okay? Now, the thing to think about when we're doing this A shape is that an A can be extended. Okay, so if you have an A down here, the 1-finger one, you can cover the 5th fret over top of the E and B string. Okay, so we know we can use we can use all of these, plus in the scale of A, we have so I'm going to include all those notes in the A shape, okay? So we're going to go up here again to the 14th fret and cover those notes, and I'll let you know what note to bend them to, what fret to bend them to, okay? So starting on the D string, again we're at 14, 14, and 14. The D string can be bent, okay, downward, a whole step, which is 2 frets. So we're going up to the 16th fret. Now when we're using a volume pedal, remember we can swell into these things, which is very cool. like this. We can actually start with it pre-bent. Okay, already have it bent. That sounds so cool. Okay, without it, without the volume pedal and without the compressor, it's going to sound pretty weak. Okay, so plan on getting these two things going. If you're one of those people that use your volume knob and your pinky, you better be really, 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 really good at it, because some of these things are going to be dang near impossible, and definitely not have the sustain that you would need to pull off a lot of steel sounding stuff. Like, listen to the sustain here. It'll go as long as I hold it there. Okay, so on our D string, we just did that. We can bend it a whole step. Okay, so we can just sit there and hold it while we're in A. It is the 5th in the chord. I like to use that at the end of a song. I love to use the 5th. Okay, so if we're in A, I know this track does not stop, but you can listen and hear how I actually start with it pre-bent, use my volume pedal, and let it resolve here on the 14th fret. Okay, so like this. Okay, so not actually hitting the root note because we're hitting an E. Okay, the A note's fine, which is going down to the G string and doing the same thing. Now the E. And you'll hear guitars ringing all the time because there's a lot of them in here. Over 100 guitars sitting around. And some are acoustic, so you're going to hear that now and then if I'm in tune. Okay. And it sounds like I basically am with all this bending. Let's see how in tune I am by the end of the video. Okay, so we know now that we do have that one. And I just gave away that we have the same thing on the same fret on that we can go up a whole step. Again, a whole step is 2 frets. Half step is 1 fret up. Okay, which we will cover right now. Going down to the next string on the B string, 14th fret. Okay, you can do the G string up or down, whichever you care to do as far as the bend goes, because I pull down the D string because chances are you can make that one if you go up. Anything else down here, you start to run into trouble. You run out of neck. Okay, you run out of fingerboard. G string, do whichever way you want. Or okay, the next one is on the B string, same fret. We're only doing a half step because it has to go from from D flat or C sharp up to the D. Okay, so that's all the further it goes. Am I going to go down to the next one? No. Okay, I'm doing an A shape. Okay, but the other notes. Okay, when we get to the G string, we can go ahead and take the 16th fret. Right here. Now we can go up a whole step. That is your 3rd. The same note that's going to be at the 14th fret on the B. So if you want to bend up into that note, great. So you can play the 16th fret on the D string, and you can bend up to it, which we discussed. Okay, we're not going to bend too far on that one. You can, if you go up to the 16th fret on the D string, you can bend half a step. I bend half a step down. Okay. Now, why did I stop when it was bent down? Because that actually gets you to your third. Okay. Okay, I gotta unplug my guitar, plug it back in. It's been a while since I played this, so it needs to be plugged in and out to get rid of the dirt. And now we're going up to the one we just bent to. Okay, 14th fret on the B string. We can bend, like I said, up a half step. Okay, everything on the 14th fret sounds great with the track as far as places to stop on. Okay, because you have your G string, which is the root, the D string, which is the fifth, and the B string, which is the third. So here's the fifth. The root, and the third. Now you notice on the third, I did, because it sounds cool going from the third to the fourth, but then coming back off of the fourth. Okay? Or you can just do the pre-bend with the volume off and do that. It just sounds weird when the volume is up. It doesn't have the same effect, but you might find it useful. So play with it however you care to use it. I'm just here to give you the information. Don't do as I do. Don't do as I say. Just soak up what you care to soak up. Okay, now when we get to the fourth, which is the B string at the 15th fret, you can bend it up a whole step. So you have the first one, which is at the 14th. Now when we get to the actual D note, now this here's what, like I said, when we extend the A chord. Okay, we're extending up to the high E, which is at the 17th fret. Okay, on the B string. Okay, that becomes a fifth again. Okay, like this one. And we know that's a cool sounding one that we can bend up a whole step. Because we did it down here. That's one of those that sound great. Just bending up and releasing it, or starting with the volume down and so forth. Okay, so you can hear it's not the A, it's not the root, it's the fifth. Okay, and then from there, I simply like to go up to the A. So up to the 17th fret on your high E string, full step bend. Okay. Okay, so those are a few of those together. Putting them all together, I can do a few things. Number one, I want to quickly put the A string in here. I want you to go down to the 12th fret, which is your A, on the A string, of course. Okay, so you can bend that downward a whole step. Now we're back onto the 14th fret, which is what we bent it to. Bend it down another whole step. That makes a third, which is very cool to bend to. It's a great note to end on, like end the song on, or just to end a phrase on. Okay, so you see how that goes. That's very cool. And the other note that sounds cool here is the low E, so 12th fret on the low E string. Okay, so here we have the A, and then I'll throw the B, and it's a whole step thing as well. So here's the A. Now the E. Okay, so I love ending on a fifth or on an E because it's awesome. And you can already tell that later on, when the chord changes to E near the end of the whole progression, when we go to in E, when we go back to A, we can still stay in E and bend it and end on an E because it sounds cool. It's the fifth of the A. So it's two E things going on together. It doesn't sound like you're changing over anything, but the chords under you are changing. Okay, so now we can go all the way up to the 2nd fret. Now these are just bends that hurt because that's where we're at. Okay, so same thing. You can bend the A string by going over top of the nut. And bending it up a whole step. Okay, everything else remains the same as before. Okay, so you have, which is always a slick looking move, and of course it sounds great. Tastes great, less filling. And then of course at the 2nd fret, gotta love that E ringing over there. And so that was the 2nd fret, bending it up to the 4th. Bending it up to the 4th fret, which is actually the 3rd of the chord. Okay, so we're doing the A shape still. So we can bend the 4th fret of the A string up half a step. Exactly the same as up here. So I'm going to run through these quickly. So 4th fret up to the 5th fret. Okay, so now to the 2nd fret of the G string, we can bend it down. Good luck, it's a tough one. And the G string's even tougher. B not so much because we're only going half a step, if you remember from being up here. So 2nd fret D string, which is the 5th, which sounds really classy. Now what is cool is we're getting ready to go to a D chord, and the 3rd of a D chord is actually on the 4th fret of the D. Because you got D, so we have this E ringing, which is the 5th of your A chord, and then normally we release it, which is where you should do it, back down to the E, but we go up to this F sharp, and that's the 3rd of the D chord. So listen here, I'm going to just simply bend that 2nd fret a whole step a few times while we're in A, but when the backing track goes to the D chord, I'm going to bend it back up a whole step, and it becomes the 3rd of the D chord. Okay, so check this out. Just a quick thing to show you what happens when we go to D. Now when we go to E, okay, so there are a lot of different thoughts going on there. You'll never just stay on that note and bending it around, but you hear the different chord changes going on underneath there. Okay, so that is groovy. Okay, so now on the G string, we can of course do what I was talking about up here. Do a whole step. It hurts. Bend it whichever way, up or down, that works for you. I go down. Yeah, somebody's going to use that for their ringtone. No, you won't. Whole step. Okay, so I did the second fret, second fret, second fret, and leaving that one bent down is proper, okay, because that takes you to your third. The second fret is your fifth, to your sixth, then back to your fifth. So if you're playing an A6, you can actually, and it's fine, you can leave it there. Get a pedal steel sound on the low end and it sounds groovy. Okay, so if you're doing sixths, you can bend the fifth and go right to a sixth and it sounds smart. Okay, and it is smart. Okay, so again, on the A note, on the G string, second fret. Okay, when you're up, that's a suspended second, so of course you're allowed to go there. It depends on what kind of chord you're playing, but you can't stay there. You got to bend it back down, release the bend. Release the hounds. Okay, second fret, B string. You have to bend up. We're only going half a step or one fret, so up to the D. Okay, so now we have the other notes that we have left out, and that's to get to this, the extended A thing. I'm going to show you this because I'm going to teach you some other ways to get into D here in a second from this, and then I'm going to show you the other shapes that we get to work out of. Okay, so a lot of stuff and a long lesson. Stop where you need to and come back to it later when you need to. Okay, so the other notes are, of course, the fourth fret on the D string. Okay. And you can do that in passing. Okay, so you have fourth fret, you can bend it half a step, then move it up one more fret, and bend it down a whole step. Okay, that takes you to A. That takes it to the next string, that note, so that's how you get there. You can do the fourth fret again on the G string. That goes up to the third chord, third of the chord. So you can play that and let it stay bent. Okay, that's some other guitars. I muted some of them, but there are a whole lot of other acoustics in the room. Okay, so we can bend that up the whole step. And when you bend it up, that is this note, the C sharp. You can actually take it and go up to the next note by half a step, but that's all part of the E shape or the bar chord shape. So that's one way to get from that A to this next section of A's, or of notes in the bar chord A. And I'm going to do it in the bar chord A. Yeah, that's what we're doing, the bar chord A. Okay, but that actually gets you to the D note. So if you're going from the A chord, you can stay right there when a chord changes to D, because if you look at your D chord, that A is the fifth of it. So if we go to E, okay, we go back like that. I'm going to do that one thing, and that is simply clip a tuner on up here, because I knew I would need to. And am I going to cut video while I'm doing this? No. It's, hey, my A string of all things. And my low E. Funky. Okay. So, the next string is going to be up to the 5th fret on the B string, which is where we were. Okay, because first at the 2nd fret we had bend it up, half step. 3rd fret we can bend it all the way up, a whole step. Okay, with context. Okay, was the 5th fret. Okay, I'm using some fingers behind it, but that's 5th fret on the B string. Okay, doing a whole step bend, and finally we're just at the high E string on the A note. Another whole step. So when you work on these, it's cool to do all of the notes available to get your head wrapped around everything. So going backwards, we have as well, because it's a 5th, but you have to bend it over the nut when you're in the key of A. Okay, but that's cool too when you go to the low E, because you're playing an A before it goes to E, then you hit that E, then land on it right when the chord changes to E. Very impressive. Okay, I am in tune. Groovy. Okay, so now the next set of choices over top of another chord. We're going to go right to the bar chord. Okay, and all this stuff's going to hold true for the other chords, so they'll go by faster, but I'll have a few things to show you again how to get from one chord to the other, which notes to use, and they'll make sense by that time, which ones you pick. That's why I keep telling you it's a 3rd or it's a 5th of a chord. Okay, so the bar chord, the A. So 5th fret across all of them, 2nd finger, 6th fret G string, pinky D string, 7th fret, and then your 3rd finger 7th fret on the A string. Okay, you can use it as an F looking shape, but you're just not getting the last 2 strings up here. Then, okay, so these have some familiar notes in it, and that's the first 2 on the E string and B string. We know we can bend the 5th fret up a whole step, and same thing on the B string. Okay, so that's all part of this. So we've done this already, those 2 notes. Now when we get to, let's look at it, the G string, we see what we're doing here. We're at the 6th fret. We can do that one up to the 7th fret, so a half step. Okay, now of course the A note is next, which is 7th fret on the D string. We can always take the A note and bend it a whole step. I'm bending down. If I bend up, it's really hard to do unless I have other fingers back here. If you bend too hard, just a little bit more than in pitch, you're going to fly off the edge of the fingerboard. So bending down, very cool. I like to use my middle finger and bend down. I have a lot of strength on the middle finger. Right above it is the 5th. Okay, so on the on the A string at the 7th fret. So a whole step. And then finally, the 5th fret on the low E string is your A again. So of course, A can go a whole step. So we have, starting from the beginning, 5th fret, whole step. 5th fret, whole step. B string. G string will always be, when we're doing the bar chord, will always be half step. Okay, everything else is whole step. Only G string in a bar chord is half step. So we have the A on the D string, or A string, and the low E string. Okay, so all of them. Okay, so I switched up to D. What I did there to switch to D was simply move from A to D. It's the note right down here on the G string, straight down. So you can do it that way, or you can actually stay on the A. Here I am staying on the A. I'll do a few things, and when it switches to D, I will stay on the D string, but at the 7th fret, which is the A note. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do when it goes to the D. It always sounds kind of weird when you go right to the root note. So when it switches to D and you go right to D, that's a fine choice, of course. But with these things, I just really like going to that 5th or a 3rd. Just sounds smart again. It's not expected. So here we are in A again. And here we go to D right now. Okay, so going up to the D was just natural to stay in A. Anything you do in A, you can pretty much do in D. So the next chord, you can almost do exactly the same stuff. Mess around with it, you'll see there's only like one note difference. And that will be your root note can stay the same. We just go up to the D root note, but all the other bends are going to be the same rules, half steps, whole steps. Okay, So that is over top of the bar chord shape. Next one is over the D shape. So we have a D chord, but we need to take it all the way up to A. So you're at the G string at the 9th fret, 10th fret on the B string, and 9th fret on the high E. So you finger it just like you do the regular D chord. Just take it up there at 9, 10, and 9. Okay, so we have we have these notes, okay, that we did. The A is on the B string. Below that, or on the G string, is your 5th. And your 3rd is on the high E. It's the 3rd of the chord that can always be bent half a step. It's always that way. From the 3rd to the 4th. Okay, but all the other stuff will always be whole step. Okay, so the 3 that we're showing, that's how they will happen. Again, for the 3rd, which is on the high E string, we'll simply go half a step. The B string, whole step. G string, whole step. Okay. Now if we finish out the shape, or the scale right there, okay, that is using your pinky. You can find them all. Remember, whole step, half step. So on the G string, put your pinky down at the 11th fret because that's a whole step. So we can go. Now we can only bend a half step. Okay, once we get to the 11th fret, because we're going to bend up to the 12th. Now the next one, we bend a step so we can go to where our pinky is. We can do a whole step, okay, because it's in A. We can bend up to that note, which is the note already part of the D shape. It's the 3rd. So if you want to bend it to that 3rd, it's always very cool to do. Anything you can bend is cool. Like I said, too much of this stuff gets really old, but we have to learn how to do all of it, or we can't do any of it. Loved how my voice cracked. You'd think at my age it would stop, but no, it does it more. Your body starts falling apart once you hit, 40, 50, something like that, and everything goes backwards. Okay. The next one is, okay, right there on the 4th, which is the 10th fret on the high E, is a whole step. So you bend it up to the E. Now the high E can be bent up a whole step. The 11th fret on the D, okay, and go half a step. We can go down 2 frets to the 7th fret on the D string and go to exactly where we just were, so that means a whole step because it's 2 frets. And when we go finally down to the 7th fret, we can go a whole step. Why are we here? Because we went down to get into the A bar chord. We found our way from here to here. we just went. So we found our way into the A. Okay, so you're just moving around the fretboard everywhere. So that note from the bar chord is the A note, the A string, which is part of the A shape. So we went from the A shape to the bar chord shape up to the D shape. And what happens there? That E is actually way into the A shape again here at the 14th. It's the next to the, dang near the next to the highest note in the extended version of the A. Because this, the D shape, is the same as the A shape. Okay, so why do you move here? Because you can do some cool stuff like this. Or you can't do it over here. Okay, so different places mean you can bend different strings while other strings are ringing and other positions don't allow you to. Okay, so you can start getting steel bends and stuff if you let another note ring. So experiment with that too. Any place that I've told you you can bend, you can bend. You can do that up here. But it's a lot harder than. Okay? So those are all the shapes. Now going from one chord to another, that's the note. Okay, we are in tune. That only gets you kind of there. It's not a real scientific method of getting there. Again, ways of getting from A to D. Okay. Thing that's really cool is if you use part of the bar chord again, but use it looking like an F. So you take an F chord and still you can think about it as a bar chord, but I like to think about the F shape because it works for me, because I know I can go, because it's part of this, and I can play steel bends. Okay. Okay, so each one of those I can bend and let the previous note ring. Okay, but while I'm thinking about a bar chord, I don't think about it as much. But when I do the F shape, for some reason I think about that. But if you're doing like an F shape, like I want you to do now, at the 5th fret, 5, 5, 6, 7, 5, 5, 6, 7, is all you have to do is flatten out your ring finger or your 3rd finger and those 3 notes. There's your A shape. And you could do everything that you did, so you go right to that. Okay, so, and all those notes are going to be the same. Whatever you did, you bend it. So you got your half step still on the B string. It's always going to do that when you're in an A shape. That's all still in D. Why? Because we're playing out of the A shape like I showed you. So if you're playing in A, like the F shape or like the bar chord shape, and it switches to D, you're right there to play whatever happens in the D shape. Now you can look and see what bends in the A thing are going to bend to the D, which is actually in an A shape. So we're looking at this F shape, and I know that that G string is only allowed to be bent up half a step. When it does bend up, it bends right to a D note. Okay, so I know I can do that. Another thing is, look, the D string in A is already one of the notes in the A shape of the D chord. So I can sit there in A, and when it goes to D, I can do the exact same thing again because I'm in D. So it's one of those cool things that you can do twice if you want and be right there. Okay, the other ones, if you look at them both again, if I look at the B string, what does it take to get to this chord, to get to that note on the B string? It takes a whole step bend. So, okay. So that's what it would take to get up to the third of the D. Okay, so right when it switches to the D chord, I can do that. And you're already here. Then you can do your stay there or go any place I've taught you to go. Okay? So that's a really cool way, because if you're looking at the F shape, it's easier to think about what's going to be in the A shape. You can see what's going to transpire from that F shape to when you flatten out your third finger. Okay, it's real easy to tell what you can bend, how much of a bend it is. Is it a whole step? Is it a half step? Does it get to remain where it was? Okay, so a very cool thing right there. Okay, so now the chord progression goes from A to D and then back to A. Okay, so you just get to play everything in your mind backwards. This one is the easiest one to think of right now, and that's getting from that A-shaped D chord back to A. Okay, so if you're in D, do what it takes to get a note pre-bent up to one of those notes and release it back down to anything that is in the A chord, which is shaped like an F currently. But you can see how you can think of this. You're just thinking of it backwards of what we just now did. So I'm going to pick, I want to do a big bend. So I want to do this B string. I see it here, but I know when I go back to A, it has to be on the 5th fret. It is on the 7th, but I want it to go back to the 5th fret because it's a big, dramatic bend. So I'm in A. I'll play along in A with these bends in the F shape. When I go to the D, I'll do some typical D bends. I'll let you know when I'm going back to A, and I will do that bend, okay, on the B string. And I'll start with it pre-bent and release it. Okay, so here we are in A, just playing over top of the F shape. Okay, hey, guitars keep on ringing. So you hear how it went and switched from a D chord to an A. Okay, it was the one I chose to do. I did not want to go from the D note and just go back half a step. I could. Or just simply have stayed on the 7th fret on the D string, but I could have bent it a whole step, which is nice sounding as well. I'll do that one this time and use that D string whole bend. We're already on it, but I'll go ahead and do it twice. I'll bend it during the D and then bend it again right after that to get back to the A, to show you that it's cool to do them twice in a row. So here we are in A. So I got to use the bend, and then I had to go to E, so I had to flatten the A note, okay, because it went to E right after all that. So that's something to remember, is once you are back to A, your 1 chord, that your root note is going to go backward or flatten just 1/2 step. Okay, when we go to the 5 chord, the E chord. Okay, so we're going to get ready to talk about that in just a second. So a few things will change when we go to the E chord, but nothing will change as far as the shapes of the chords. Okay, just basically remember that you go back 1/2 step from the root note to get to the 3rd of an E chord. Okay. Okay, so there we have getting from like an F shape to an A shape in the key of A. Okay, doing it from, let's say, the D shape way up here and going to an F shape again, or a big bar chord all the way up here at the 10th fret, 10, 12, 12, 11, 10, 10. Or I love to look at it like the F. Okay, so here we are again, back to the A. And all the other things we did. So all those, practice. It's great to remember when there's a half step, when there's a whole step, because all those are going to get you from A to D. Okay, so you're looking at what's coming up next. Your 3rd, while we're playing this, is the shortest move other than the B string, which is already where it would need to be if we go to the F shape. Okay, so we have an actual bend, which is what I'm after, because this whole thing's about bends. We have a bend on the high E string, which will take us from the 9th fret to the 10th fret, because there it is, and we're going to go up to. Okay, so we actually will go. So that half step bend that we're already doing will happen, or can happen, when we go to the D chord. So we're, and then when we go to D, and then we're there. And if we want to come back to the A, we just start with a pre-bend of where it's going to go. It's at the 10th fret, but we'll start it at the 10th fret via a half step bend, and then let loose of it. Okay, so that's one thought. Another thought is we can go, because we're picturing that whole F-shaped thing, and we are at the 9th fret with our G string. You can actually sit there and just bend it while you have the shape there, and it will be right there on the G string where you needed to go, bent up to the 11th fret. Okay, so there you go. You bend it right up to the 3rd of the D chord. It is shaped like an F. Okay, so you can actually quiet the high E string and have 2 notes of that F-shaped D chord. Okay, check it out. So that's a really cool thing that you can do 2 notes. One stays where it is, the other one bends into that shape. Okay, so that's one cool thing to think about as well. You have a bend, half-step bend on your high E string that will get you there. When you're in the D shape, your next one is already there. It's in the next chord. And your final one on the G string has to bend a whole step to get there. And it's always going to be this way. If you go from a D shape to an F shape, it's always going to be a half step will get you there. The next one, it's already there. And you can just simply bend it up a whole step and release it. When you release it, it sounds very cool that you release it right when the chord changes. It's just a cool sounding thing. Okay, demo again with the D shape and the F shape. I will bend the G string up when it goes to D. Okay, just because. That's it. So here I am in A. There I just simply went back half step because I had told you that the A note, the root note, will go back half a step to prove to you that it does that. Okay, so it goes to the 3rd of an E chord. Okay, if you're doing this A thing, when it goes to E, we've already got an E there. And what is cool is we get to go from the D shape to just simply going back one with a finger, that D shape going back, and we have an A shape for the E chord. And that's back to A when you go back to a D shape, but with that one extra finger there at the 11th fret on the D string. That's a cool one to look at. Okay, so let's look at it. Take your D chord. It's actually an A chord, but it looks like a D. Put your pinky at the 11th fret on the D string. Take a look at that puppy. Okay, you can see how it's formed. Okay, now let's put one finger in an A shape on the E, which is all at the 9th fret. Now if you look at that, 2 of the notes, the G string and the high E string, are already going to be there for when we put one finger down on the B string at the 10th fret. That already gives us our D shape. So we're back in A already, but we want to add simply the 11th fret on the D string. So we go from E, being able to play 3 notes, to being able to play 4 notes by putting these 2 fingers down on for the A note again, or the A chord, I'm sorry. we can see those coming up. So if you're in E, you know what notes can be bent to this looking shape, which is a D chord shape, but with one extra note added in. So you know that you can actually bend in, okay, the one that's on the D string. You can hear it. Okay. So you look at it the same way as we've looked at everything else. If you're going backwards, okay, you're in A with the D-shaped thing. You know that you have to start, let notes loose. Okay, now this D string, to get from there to the E note, the E chord, to A shape, we're going to have to go from the 11th fret to the 9th, so we have to pre-bend it. Okay, so we think of getting from one chord to the other by visualizing the next chord, so you can see if it has to be pre-bent and released, or if it has to be hit and then bent upward, or bent up in pitch, whether you bend down or bend up. Okay, so that's the trick to all this, or the actual whole point of all of this, is to know what the chords look like and think about them beforehand. Know whether you're going to do a pre-bend and let it loose, or if you're going to hit a note and bend it up to the next chord. Okay, but also we are thinking, like if I'm in E using the A shape, that we have, while we're there, choices. We can do all the bends. Okay, so I'm just picking different fingers to play those notes that I'm visualizing. I know they're all right there. Okay, so that's that. I mean, that's the jack on my guitar again. Okay, it should be groovy. Okay, so again, visualize what is coming up, what is there when you are there, and what is coming up again from chord to chord to chord. And again, I can't stress this enough. Don't use this for like an entire solo or anything else. Use it for one or two notes in any given chord at the most. Okay, so I will go through something with the backing track and show you how I would personally do something with this stuff. So I just did 3 or 4 things total from what we have learned. I just picked out a couple. Okay, the rest of it, as you heard, was just typical major scale playing stuff. So I like to do these things during the chord change myself. It sounds cool. And I mainly like to use the 5th. Okay, the 5th below. So if we're in A, I like to use the E. That's the 5th. Okay, so that's my preference to doing things. But when we go to the 4 chord or the D, I like to kind of like stay out of there or do the 3rd. So if I'm in A, I'll go to the A here and do the, okay, start on the D and think about the A stuff. Start with the half step bend, which we can only do on the B string while we're in an A shape. Then we go, that's back to A, and then we go from A to E. Sometimes I like to do the 3rd, which is when you go back half a step. Okay, but a lot of times I like to use the actual note of the E, but that's actually the 5th of the A, which is the E note, and start with it bent down. So it actually lands on the E right when the chord changes. Okay, so I'm in A. So we're in A, D to A, E there. I can do that same bend because it's in A and it's in E. It's just an E note. It's the 5th of the A. It's the root of the E. So it's one bend that can be cool twice in a row, as I demonstrated before. It's just something that when you look at it, it makes sense because it's part of the E chord, and which is actually a bar chord. It would be a bar chord if you could put your finger behind the nut. Okay, so you have the E note right there at the 2nd fret of the D string, and it's also part of the A shape. So it's a no-brainer, okay, that it's going to be a whole step in both places. You think about the rules. If it's like this, it's only the B string that has to go a half step, so you could do that whole step bend. And when you go to the bar chord or the F shape, you can bend that one a whole step too. It's only the G string that has to go a half step. Okay, so it switches up. That when it's an F shape or a bar chord shape, it's the G. It's all out of line, so it makes sense that it would only do half a step, because if you look at it, you have these 2 fingers. To make it from A to D, all you do is fill in one more space where these 2 fingers are, and that gives you that. So you look at it, and it's like, wow, it can only bend from here to here. So you're looking at it in advance, and you know that your G string can only bend half a step. So that made my choice for me, going from the A, picking that note because I love the sound of the 5th, and then it automatically is the same thing. I could do a whole step while I'm in E, so it gets me back to the E. So when I go to E, I'm picking other stuff now that we've already done, but I'm picking it differently so that it doesn't sound like I'm trying to do what we're accomplishing right now. It's the same stuff, and of course you can use all of this stuff in your typical picking. And it doesn't have to sound like what we've been doing, even though it is. Okay, it's exactly what you've probably been playing all this time, but you just haven't thought about it in the context that I'm showing it to you in. Okay, so just to yell these out again, and then I'll stop for today. I'll play the backing track and show you the different shapes, and you can try to guess the choices I'm making going from shape to shape. So I'll do this like 3 times through and start with a different shape and go to a different shape for each chord and see if you can guess what's going on. Okay, hopefully it will make sense to you. The more you watch this, the more sense my choices will make. I'm going to do very, very basic choices. Okay, not a lot of notes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with A as an A shape. Okay, and then I'll go to D as a D shape, back to A, and then I'll go to E that way. Then I'll work myself up to A here, D here, A here, and then as a D shape, you know, for the E, and that kind of thing. And then like the last one, I might pick different shapes around the neck because I will work myself from one place to another place on the neck. Okay, so here are the basic bends. And again, I love to use the fifth a lot. So that's what you'll hear in a lot of situations. Okay, so that should not confuse you much. I tried to show the shape and the choices I was making. Okay, so I hope that really helps out. And again, don't play what I was just playing. Definitely do it for practice. Do basically what I was doing. Make choices, and until you're just sick of bending. And then the stuff will become natural to you, and you'll say, okay, I get it. I just use these sparingly, because like anything new, you want to use it, and you do use it way too much. So again, also think about what shapes that you can bend to that will actually become like a steel bend, because we can go from our and bend notes from A to D. Now we're in D, then back to A, because there are a lot of those. And then when we go from A, we just went to E, back to A. Okay, and that's all part of E there. That brings you right back to A. So those kind of things will help you figure out the steel licks, how to get from not only A to D, but from D back to A by doing a backward steel bend. Okay, pedals on pedal steel guitars don't only push down, they go from the down part and release back to where they were. So again, pre-bends, like having the pedals down on the pedal steel, that's a pre-bend. And you just lift it up and you're back to your one chord again. Okay, so keep all that in mind and happy picking. Stay groovy. Later on, Herpy Trails.